Early in the war, Allied agents contact Sharif Hussein, one of the key tribal leaders in Arabia. The British have heard about a nationalist movement gaining strength across the desert. They want to use Arab nationalism as a weapon in the war against the Turks. The British urge Hussein to join the Allies and lead an Arab revolt in the desert. Hussein is quite clear about what he wants in return for his support in the war: Arab independence. London agrees to help achieve that goal, but their response is appropriately vague. They don't want the Arabs to be completely free. What they really want is British influence in Arabia. On June 10, 1916, Hussein finally declares a revolt against the Turks. The British have supplied him with guns and gold. But the Arabs are undisciplined. Various tribes and factions argue among themselves. One British officer says the Arabs are just looters and murderers. They would not stand casualties. While a revolt has been declared, no one really knows its strength or how reliable information about it really is.
They interrogated a deserter who had come over from the Ottoman side, a young Arab who claimed to be a representative of Arab secret societies that, according to him, honeycombed the Ottoman armies. Most of the Ottoman troops were, in fact, Arab. And so this young officer said that there was a very good possibility that as much as half or more of the whole Ottoman Empire would switch sides in the war and come over to the Allied side if they felt that the British were going to give Arabs their independence after the war. And what we know now, but they did not know then, was it was a hoax. The young man spoke for nobody but himself.
One fact is clear: the Arab revolt lacks effective leadership. The Arab Bureau in Cairo sends a 28-year-old British captain, Thomas Lawrence, into Arabia to find a man who can bring the tribes together into an effective fighting force. That man turns out to be Prince Faisal, son of Sharif Hussein. Faisal has already joined a secret Arab nationalist society. Lawrence meets him in December 1916, and together, they plan a strategy for attacking the Turks. Lawrence knows the Arab rebels are no good against fortified Turkish positions. He begins to lead small, mobile detachments across the desert on hit-and-run missions. One of his favorite targets is the Hejaz Railway that runs from Medina all the way to Damascus in the north. Lawrence's genius for guerrilla warfare soon emerges. The exploits of this enigmatic soldier and scholar will be popularized 45 years later in the epic Hollywood film, Lawrence of Arabia.
Come on, man!
On July 6, 1917, Lawrence and his Arabs achieve a victory that the British generals in Cairo consider to be impossible. They capture the strategic port of Aqaba on the Red Sea, attacking across 600 miles of desert. Lawrence returns to Cairo to report his victory to General Allenby. Dressed in Arab costume, he creates quite a stir at headquarters. But Allenby has a liking for the unorthodox and appreciates Lawrence's abilities. After the victory in Aqaba, Allenby agrees to supply the Arabs with more guns and more gold. By October 1917, Allenby is ready to move against the enemy line. On a moonlit night, his army moves across the desert toward Gaza, arriving near the battleground at 3 in the morning on October 31st. A few hours later, the British strike simultaneously at Gaza and Beersheba. Allenby's plan is simple: attack Gaza and hold the enemy's attention, then send in a larger force to attack Beersheba on the Turkish left flank, take the city, then concentrate everything against Gaza. The battles rage the entire day, but the main event at Beersheba is the famous cavalry charge of the 4th Australian Light Horse Regiment. depicted in the 1987 film, The Light Horseman.
The long lines of cavalry swept forward at racing speed, half obscured in clouds of reddish dust. Over the Turks they went, leaping the two lines of deep trenches, and flung themselves into the trenches with the bayonet.
The Turkish line is broken and the enemy retreats to the north. The loss of Beersheba in a single day stuns the Turkish army. The next day, Allenby's troops hit the Turks hard at Gaza. Incredibly, most of the enemy still holds, and the Turks even make some counterattacks. But they cannot hold out against far superior forces. After holding solid for 9 months, the great Turkish line of defense has been destroyed. The third battle for Gaza is the beginning of the end for the Ottoman Empire. The Turkish armies are in retreat and General Allenby is in hot pursuit. He wants to destroy as much of the enemy as he can while he has the upper hand. He knows there is plenty of fight left in the Turks. They may be retreating, but they are not giving up. Instead of continuing his drive to the north, Allenby turns to the east, toward the holy city of Jerusalem. The symbolic history of that ancient city, sacred to Christians, Muslims, and Jews, is more important at the moment than another great victory against the Turks. Lloyd George has already told Allenby to take Jerusalem before Christmas. The religious significance is not lost on Christians among the British troops.
Ford's Tin Lizzies ploughed through the sandhills and raced along the coast tracks where Pharaoh's war chariots had travelled. A derelict tank lay in no man's land, within rifle shot of where Samson's primitive weapon of the jawbone of an ass had proved more deadly.
Well, in some respects it was a crusade. But Allenby is really sensitive about this because he doesn't want it to be called a crusade. A lot of his soldiers were Muslim. I mean, his labor force, for example. He also had Indian troops. And so he doesn't want this sort of Christian versus Muslim conflict.
Throughout 1917 and 1918, the Arab revolt plays havoc with the Turkish line of communications, pinning down about 30,000 enemy troops that cannot be used against Allenby. But they stay clear of the fortress at Medina.
The idea of assaulting Medina was not in accord with our best strategy. We wanted the enemy to stay in Medina and in every other harmless place in the largest numbers, so long as he gave us the other 999 thousandths of the Arab world.
On a night of rain and bitter cold, British forces attacked the holy city of Jerusalem on December 7, 1917. The enemy offers strong resistance at first, but they are only 15,000 men against overwhelming enemy numbers. They begin to withdraw from the city. 4 centuries of Ottoman rule have come to an end. On December 11th, General Allenby enters Jerusalem on foot out of respect for the city. He is the 34th conqueror of Jerusalem in its long, volatile past. After a campaign that has lasted 40 days and 40 nights, with the loss of 18,000 men, the British soldiers have delivered a Christmas present to their nation. In the city, Allenby delivers a proclamation to the crowd and dignitaries gathered.
Since your city is regarded with affection by the adherents of 3 of the great religions of mankind, and its soil has become consecrated by the prayers and pilgrimages of multitudes of devout people of those 3 religions for many centuries, therefore do I make it known to you that every sacred building, monument, holy spot, shrine, or customary place of prayer, of whatsoever form of the 3 religions, will be maintained and protected according to the existing customs and beliefs of those to whose faiths they are sacred.
The Turks lose 25,000 men in the struggle that began October 31st. They are down but not out, and still hold a strong defensive line from the Mediterranean to the Dead Sea.